Klimt painted the kiss during the most difficult period of his life. A 5-year-long scandal with the faculty paintings had just ended. The University of Vienna rejected Klimt's commission, considering it outrageously indecent, almost pornographic. Klimt idolized women. He was never married, which allowed him to sleep with almost all of his models. And this ultimately led to a phenomenal result of 14 children, although he officially acknowledged only 6 of them. However, he lived his whole life with his mentally ill mother, returning to her every day from the bed he shared with yet another lover. The female body, nudity, and sensuality, along with ambition, were perhaps his main hobbies in life, and naturally, this was reflected in his work. The same occurred with the scandal over his university paintings. In 1900, 8 years before the kiss, the University of Vienna commissioned 4 ceiling paintings. Klimt made sketches and won 3 out of the 4 commissions in the competition. They were supposed to depict the leading sciences, philosophy, medicine, and jurisprudence. Franz von Mach, a friend of Klimt, commissioned the 4th theology. In 1900, Klimt exhibited the first painting, Philosophy. Unfortunately, these paintings have not survived to this day. They were burned by the retreating Wehrmacht troops in 1945. But photographs of these paintings remain, and I will be able to show them to you. The philosophy immediately caused a tremendous shock in the scientific community. The result not only did not match the sketches, it depicted the future of science as extremely pessimistic and also contained a scattering of naked female bodies. It's unthinkable how something like that could be hung on the ceiling of the Temple of Science. Ah, if only the hard-headed academics could read the future. However, at the exhibition in Paris, the painting became a star and won a gold medal. The second painting in the series, Medicine, added fuel to the fire. Viennese newspapers exploded with indignation, and the scientific community accused Klimt of pornography. Passions ran so high that in the third painting, Klimt completely lost it, declaring that he would not waste time on revisions. And in 1905, Klimt returned the advance for the paintings, declaring that he would never again work for a government client. This scandal became a turning point in Klimt's life. It both hurt his pride and gave him a new impulse, making Klimt not only independent from commissions, but also the most famous artist in Austria. In that same year, 1905, the Vienna Secession, the Association of Progressive Austrian Artists, disbanded. It broke up due to disagreements. Some of the artists believed that art should remain within the classical boundaries of painting, sculpture, and architecture. The other group, led by Klimt, believed that beauty should be spread as widely as possible and integrated into everyday life, to decorate ugliness and lack of aesthetics and thus improve the world by raising the level of taste among the population. It is this idea of decorating and aestheticizing the surrounding world that we will see in the kiss, which, as we now know, has become deeply embedded in everyday life. I think Klimt would be delighted. It is generally believed that Klimt's golden period began in 1905, as a kind of challenge to the conservative art community following the echoes of the scandal that punished the artist Zanvalnadumstva. But I managed to find the only color image of the 3 faculty paintings. A color phototype of the figure of Hygeia from Medicine has survived. And we can see that he started using gold in his paintings much earlier. Klimt's father was a jeweler, so Gustav learned gold working techniques early on. And in 1899, a year before he started working on the university paintings, he visited Italy, where he was struck by the golden mosaics in St. Mark's Basilica in Venice. And the artist decided to use the same technique for painting the Academy's ceiling, already having basic knowledge of working with gold. For him, it was a very natural step. Klimt began to paint The Kiss in 1907, and he first presented it at an exhibition in Vienna in 1908. After the scandal and refusing to work with the government, Klimt struggled to fund exhibitions. However, that year, the 60th anniversary of Emperor Franz Joseph I's reign was celebrated on a grand scale. After 3 years without exhibitions, Klimt couldn't miss such an opportunity. He arranged with the government to organize an exhibition as part of the anniversary, where the kiss was presented for the first time. At that time, the painting was called Lovers and wasn't a standalone work, but a companion to the 3 Ages of Woman, which Klimt painted in 1905. I think that by combining these two paintings, Klimt wanted to show the beginning and end of the 3-year period without exhibitions, to illustrate the changes his work underwent during that time. And the kiss was unconditionally liked by everyone. The newly built Belvedere Museum quickly purchased the painting for the huge sum of 25,000 crowns, just $300,000. Now, experts agree that this was a veiled compensation for the scandal with the university paintings. But you have to admit, the museum couldn't have come up with a better investment. By that time, Klimt had already become a world star, and the roles had shifted a bit. The publicist Berta Zucker-Kandel commented on this decision in the newspaper like this: "Finally, an incomprehensible oversight has been corrected. Finally, the almost unbelievable fact that the Austrian Gallery of Modern Art did not own a representative work by the greatest master has been rectified." And The Lovers, an almost chaste, gentle painting, so sharply contrasting with the provocative eroticism of the faculty paintings, appealed to everyone. It depicts a man and a woman closely pressed together. The man is kissing the woman on the cheek, her face turned toward us, her eyes closed in thrilling longing. The woman embraces the man around the neck, her fingers seemingly drawn together in a gesture of anticipation and bliss. In this painting, Klimt perfects his signature contrast between the naturalistic depiction of flesh and the graphic, flat ornamental surroundings. Only by the ornament can we recognize the outlines of their clothing, the man's rough angular pattern and the woman's gentle rounded one. Around them is a golden halo, as if protecting the lovers, isolating them from the world and adorned with its own unique ornament. They are standing on a grassy, flower-covered ledge, with flowers woven into their hair. The painting is filled with a sense of calm and gentle sensuality, which is easily conveyed to the viewer. Everyone who saw the painting in 1908 was also delighted, and although the exhibition itself was a financial failure and its real scandalous star was Kokoschka, it rehabilitated Klimt and elevated him to the Olympus of world artists. The painting was shown unfinished at the exhibition. Later, Klimt finished and corrected it, lengthening the woman's shins, which were anatomically incorrect at first. And what did his colleagues criticize him for? For the background, Klimt used his own technique. First, he applied glue to the painting to create raised parts of the image for texture. Then he partially covered the canvas with gold leaf. We can see these plates in the background. Then he covered the base with glaze to darken the background and finally added spots of gold paint. Gold plays the leading role in the painting, emphasizing the characters and the couple's surroundings. Look at the painting under ultraviolet light. The dark spots are gold. Some recent art historians claim that the painting does not actually depict a kiss. Allegedly, we do not see consent in the woman's face. She has turned away from the man and they see in her gesture a desire to push him away. But I think these are the same people who call the kiss of love, with which the prince revives Snow White, a kiss without consent and almost an act of assault. And it's enough to look at the sketch for the painting where we see a slightly different pose, in which there is obviously no disagreement. I'll also add that if they had simply looked into the original title of the painting, Lovers Unloved and Defenseless, Not the Horrors of Patriarchy, they wouldn't have made a laughingstock of themselves. The kiss resolved the long-standing Viennese conflict but also sparked many rumors. Who is the woman depicted in the painting, and what is her relationship with Klimt? We can tell what relationships Klimt had with his models by how many children he fathered. But we're in for a surprise. Legend has it that a nobleman commissioned Klimt to paint this portrait before his wedding, giving him only a pendant with his bride's image. And Klimt liked the woman so much that he decided to keep the kiss for himself and deliberately did not depict it in the painting. A sweet story that becomes a tall tale if you know the mysterious woman's true identity in the painting. In fact, the artist gave the woman the features of Emily Floger, his longtime friend. They once had a romantic relationship, but even at the beginning of the century, 8 years before the painting was created, Emily was his muse, but she left Valakita when he started flirting with yet another model. However, they remained on very good terms until the end of their lives, and even as he was dying after a stroke, Klimt asked for Emily to be brought to him. Their friendly union was both creative and a business partnership. Emily Floger was a well-known fashion designer, and it was her outfits that Klimt always dressed his models in, and of course, those were the ones he painted later. That's why Emily's face in this painting confuses everyone, because they were not publicly in a romantic relationship. There are even art historians who believe that it's just a friendly kiss, but will remind them again of the painting's original title, The Lovers. The well-known Klimt researcher Alice Strobel recently proved, based on sketches for the painting, that it depicts Klimt himself and Emily. Look at the man's clothing. It's loose, with an open collar. That's exactly the kind of robe Klimt himself traditionally wore. As for Emily, she always preferred and wore so-called reform dresses, a kind of feminist challenge of that time, freeing women from the corset. We don't see the man's face, but Klimt rarely depicted men. In his paintings, men usually served as accessories to women. And although Klimt and Vleughels never spoke about the nature of their relationship, we know that after Klimt's death, Emily burned a huge box of letters from their personal correspondence. And this gives us reason to assume that she had something to hide, and their romantic relationship did not end after the breakup. Perhaps Emily was Klimt's only true love, who was never able to restrain his lust, but expressed his real feelings in the kiss, disguising its subjects, hiding his own face, and changing his lover's hair color. Look at the floral wreaths on the lovers' heads, and this hints at some kind of ritual. The woman's lips are closed, even though in all of Klimt's paintings they are usually sensually parted. This tells us about Klimt's especially tender attitude toward the model. He doesn't dare cast the shadow of his lust upon her. Personally, I like to think of it that way. Researchers and art historians in general really love to embellish things, making up interpretations and stories out of thin air. Some, for instance, say the rectangles on the man's clothing symbolize sperm, while the flowers on the woman's dress represent eggs. But I'm really not sure that Klimt in 1908 even knew such words, or let alone had seen these remarkable creatures. There is no evidence that he was interested in biology, or even more so, that he liked to cover his models' dresses with human physiological secretions. Or, for example, others say that the very outline of the couple resembles a phallic symbol. But excuse me, by that logic, any person resembles a phallic symbol, and all people are just walking phalluses. But we're not such big fans of the grotesque to seriously take the products of such a fevered imagination. Some say Klimt got the idea for the kiss from other artists. For example, Munch also painted The Kiss and the Three Ages of Woman, creating them 10 years before The Kiss. But it seems to me that it's hard to borrow the idea of a kiss. It's like borrowing the idea of love, when almost all art is dedicated to it anyway. Artists have depicted the kiss in hundreds of ways, and Klimt found his own. But you have to admit, it's incredibly emotional, sensual, and I'll say it, genius. Subscribe.